Welcome to another episode of the All Tense Podcast. I'm your co-host, Josh West. With me, as always, Clay Harrison. Today, Clay, we're continuing our episodes of Outside the Guide. And today we're going to dive into something many of our clients struggle with. It's how to appropriately compensate their staff. Clay, what are you seeing in the room?
You know that Jerry Maguire, you know the movie Jerry Maguire where Rod Tidwell is like negotiating a contract and at some point he just says, F you pay me.
Yeah, show me the money.
Show me the money. Wait, is that not from that movie? Is that a different movie? Or is that just something that I say in my head? Anyway, welcome to the podcast. Yeah, well, comp, man, like this is the thing. The biggest, most recent episodes we've been talking about financials. And my guess is that for the vast majority of the clients that we work with, pay is the number one bucket of costs. And so when we talk about creating a little bit more clarity or reducing chaos within a business, one of the big sources for that is like poorly ideated and poorly executed compensation plans. And so we brought this to the podcast because we just want y'all to act right. We just want our clients to get a better handle on how they manage comp. So that's what we're talking about today, Josh. I think one of the places to start is this idea of like hourly versus salary, right? And so most of my clients are primarily salary driven, and I think sometimes people kind of get confused as to whether that distinction, salaried versus hourly, is the thing that drives whether or not I got to pay someone overtime. And the first kind of lesson I want to make sure everyone who's listening to the pod understands is that it has no bearing. Whether or not someone should be compensated for additional hours work doesn't matter whether you pay them a salary or hourly for their time. It's a completely different distinction. So first thing, like, get rid of the idea that just because you pay someone salary doesn't mean that they're eligible for overtime. But I know that maybe we'll get to that later. That's just something that popped in my head. But riff with me on salary versus hourly.
Yeah, consult your local labor laws, okay? Just as when we talked about financial statements, Clay and I are not CPAs. We are also not labor attorneys. So, again, always consult your local laws. And, you know, with my clients, most of the time, the people that I'm in the room with are salaried, but there are certainly people at the organization that are salaried and people who are paid hourly. And so first, we could just broadly talk about what are the types of roles that probably should be paid hourly. And, you know, if the work is tied to shifts or coverage, if this is task-based work, if the schedule varies a lot, or it's seasonal, or this part-time or temporary in any sense, all of that is likely that you should probably be paying those people hourly. And that's great for you as a business owner. You're trading those hours for dollars to get that work done. You get what you pay for. That's a wise management of labor cost for that type of work that needs to get done. This is also fair for the employees that work in those roles. So, I mean, we're out here in the desert in Arizona, and there is a lot of seasonality out here. When it gets hot outside, air conditioners break. So for my clients, when everything's nice in the wintertime, okay, well, maybe those guys don't work as much, but as soon as it gets hot, everything's breaking. Those guys are running service calls like mad. And so certainly you want to be able to compensate them fairly when they've got to run more service calls. And then there's a cap on that, though. We can't burn people out. And again, you know, there's laws associated with how much overtime someone can have. And, you know, that's a good starting point in understanding, is this someone I should pay hourly? What do you think, Clay?
Oh, this is a fun actual, like, entry for potential philosophical differences between us, Josh. I think I don't disagree with anything that you just said. I do think there's also a aspect to that decision that is could be a little bit more employee focused. So,
Okay.
for example, I ran an IT services business. The need for services like kind of fluctuated, right? Like it wasn't consistent. It wasn't as clearly delineated as the HVAC example that you just gave, right? Like it's not that clear. But a lot of people um, who do IT work do it hourly because like you just never know. There might be some weeks where you're really busy and some weeks where you're not. We made a choice as an employer to put all those people on a salary because we wanted to create this culture where everyone knew they were getting paid a consistent amount no matter what. Right? Even in the slow weeks, even if we put the burden on us to kind of keep them busy as opposed to be like, we'll call you when we need you. And I know that's like a gross exaggeration of like the two choices there. But I do think that some of that is rooted in in a choice that you're making. Like there's not, I think the root of what I'm saying is that as employers, we get to pick. There's certainly like regulatory requirements that you want to comply with, and there are like a bunch of great attorneys who know those regulations in and out, and you should consult with them too. But we get to make a choice as employers as to how we want to engage our employees, and that can be a foundational thing, kind of motivating, animating factor in the business that can creates the culture that you want. That's one of the inputs to the culture that you're creating.
And I'm right there with you, Clay. I just have one very critical question for you on that one. Despite the fact that you paid them a salary, did you track their hours?
Yes, because we also paid them overtime.
There you go. And that's it, right? And that was certainly one of the points I wanted to make on this pod when we talked about salary is that you still must track those hours for both sides of the spectrum, right? One is to make sure that just because you pay them salary, you're not totally overworking them and burning them out, right? And then the other end is, are we still managing those labor costs appropriately? So if we've overhired and then we haven't given people enough work to do, right? We don't want to be paying people a salary where, we're expecting 35 to 40 hours a week and we're only able to give them 10. That's not a great use of labor.
That's 100%. That's why my brain went to originally like this thing of salary or hourly has no impact on whether or not you pay someone overtime. And 100% it means, I'm saying 100% a lot. Shout out to my mom who gave me a shirt with 100% on it. The underlying thing of whether or not you pay them overtime is you have to understand the work that's being done no matter how you pay for it. Like that's also a separate thing. I do have clients and I love them all to death, but they think they pay them a salary and then they don't have to worry about time. And like that's just one part of the thing that you're come on guys, and gals, let's do a little bit better. Like we pay them a salary, cool. That doesn't mean that we have everything we need to know about whether or not they're productive, effective, efficient, all those sorts of things. You got to measure that too, and you can't do that unless you understand how much they're working from a productivity point of view, from a burnout point of view, from a overtime calculation point of view, from all these things. Like, man, I have recognized in you saying all those things, all this stuff that I've just taken for granted in my career, that like those were just things that whether it was our EOS implementer that helped us figure out, it was kind of just in the water with the guys that I started the company with, that we kind of, but I see that dichotomy between, especially for the single member founding entrepreneur who now has 12 employees, and it just, I'm going to pay you like X number of dollars, just go kill it. And they don't have time to, man, it's hard, but you got to you got to flip that switch.
You do, right? So, I'm right there with you, Clay, philosophically, right? You get to pick, but, one of the nuggets for our listeners, and we won't even wait till the end of the episode, is even if we're paying people salaries, we've still got to track the hours. I'll also even jump over to your side and say, in with some of my clients, and also even in my career prior to becoming an implementer, there was always this thing where if someone was being paid hourly, then things got sticky when we wanted people to come to some mandatory event or team building or something like that. And when those people wanted to say, well, no, like if I'm not going to be paid to be there, I don't want to come there. And then the owner and the others that are salaried look at those people and say, oh, well, they're not team players. And it's like, well, hold on. Okay. You made an agreement with them where you placed a value on their time. And then the two of you came to an agreement where you were going to trade those hours for dollars. And now you've gone to them and said, now I want hours, but I'm not going to compensate you for them. That doesn't make any sense, right? And I'm on the side of the hourly employee in that sense, right? We need a great culture, but if we're going to pay people salary and then we just expect them to come along with it, and then the hourly people say, I don't know, man, I'm not being paid to be there. Hard for me to argue with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing because one, I love you, man, and two, I've had this exact conversation as owning a business where it's like, we pay people salaries, but again, it's about we track hours. So are you going to pay me to come to this mandatory company event? Like, no, it's a barbecue. And then you just have to have this like, it's not of course it's not mandatory. Like, wow, I can't force you to come to a barbecue. That's ridiculous. And I think this is complete tangent for this pod, but this thing where like you feel like if you force people to come to the barbecue, that's the thing that's going to make the culture better. And if you just actually kind of take that objectively and think like, I'm forcing people to come to a barbecue where they're asking if they're going to get paid. Is that the culture that I want? And the answer is probably no. Anyway, tangent. That's hilarious.
Correct.
I've had that exact conversation. So
and
100%.
Here's my thing on it, right? Change the mindset where, yeah, you pay them normally to provide the service, do what needs to be done, and you're paying for those hours. And so then as an employer, why not pay them if they're only hourly to also attend that because you're paying for their hours? But instead of looking at it like, well, now I'm paying them for not doing work, you're paying as an investment in team building, in trust building, etc. So like changing your mindset and how you frame what you're paying them for in those times would be helpful.
It's been a minute since I had to make these decisions, but tell me if this fits within your framework. So like we had mandatory, like team health team, like it might still be like a dinner followed by like a escape room, whatever, right? Like something where it's like a team building thing. Mandatory, paid. Saturday, all company barbecue. Nothing's happening other than people are getting together, just fun and merriment, right? Not mandatory, not paid. That's the way that we kind of ended up approaching it, right? Whereas, yeah, I don't know.
Exactly, right? And so, and I'm in agreement with all that, but I think that we've always got to think about on what terms have we come to an agreement with someone? How are we incenting them? Is something mandatory or not? And particularly in a mixed environment where there are people who are salaried and people who are not. And the last thing you'd want to do is create an environment where there are situations where there's us and there's them. And the hourly people go, oh, well, see, look at that, right? Like they're being paid to be there, but I'm not.
Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of like other places where that shows up. It's like you have to have some clearly stated, and probably your health insurance provider is going to tell you that like if somebody works 30 hours a week, you got to offer them, there's all sorts of other things that you have to think about when you have a team that is mixed, both salaried employees and hourly employees. But the point, I think, of all the things, the thread that ties all that together is that you have to be intentional and you have to communicate it clearly, right? Because there's this other thing that I've seen happen where it's people doing the same work and some of them are salaried and some of them are hourly. And that kind of creates weird dynamics too, right? And it's, and it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means you have to clearly say why. As the leader of the company, as the owner of the company, you have to like communicate the strategy. It's not just because one's your buddy and one you just met. That's probably not going to pass muster, right? Let's be intentional when you're making these choices. Be thoughtful. Consult the right, like kind of professional advice to make sure that you're complying with all the labor laws and all those sorts of things of your locality and your state. and then explain it. Set context for the team when you're making the decision so they don't think you're making a decision in the vacuum. Joshy, I didn't know that we were going to talk this long about salary versus employee versus hourly, but here we are. Let's wrap up this episode, this salary versus hourly discussion, with a nugget. You gave one earlier. You have any other nuggets from the discussion?
I think that if we're going to make someone responsible for very large outcomes within the business, then that is certainly something where, no questions asked, we are paying them a salary. And, that's a clear delineation from what we started out the pod as. Here's why we would pay people hourly. Here's certainly why we would pay someone a salary. And, I guess I'll say it for the benefit of us more so than anyone else, that consult your local labor laws when it comes to all of these things, and, be in compliance. What do you got, Clay?
That would be my nugget, is that there are people who are familiar with your state and the regulatory requirements therein that can help you brainstorm all the different ways to think about ensuring you're in compliance, whether it's how you calculate overtime, whether it's how you compensate people for overtime, whether it's reviewing your overtime exemption kind of thoughts, because it's different from place to place and it changes. It's not static forever. What was true in 2015 is not true in 2026. So you have to put this into practice once a year, once every other year. Just run your comp practices, especially when it comes to overtime exemption, by someone who is up to date on what's happening in the legal world to give you the best advice. And I think that's the number one thing, because I just see it way too often. People think they throw a salary on someone, they don't have to worry about overtime anymore. And that's simply not true. So I think those are pretty good nuggets for our listeners. Anything else before I wrap it up?
Take them home, Clay.
Guys, this is the All Tens Podcast. We've had an unbelievable growth in listeners over the past month or two, so thank you. You must be doing a lot of sharing and subscribing and all those sorts of things. We'd love to hear your ideas for future episodes, questions that you have, things that you'd like us to pontificate on, or for Josh to be an expert on, because I'm not going to be, but Josh will be. But we'd love to hear from you. So thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next week on the All Tens Podcast. Bye, Josh. Good job.
Bye, Clay.